It is the year 1340. Welcome to the Iberian Peninsula, a medieval powder keg where royal egos are massive, life expectancy is laughably short, and international diplomacy is entirely based on forcing teenagers to marry each other. Portugal is a relatively small kingdom. Right next door is Castile, a massive, heavily armed superpower. King Afonso IV of Portugal looks at the map, starts sweating, and decides he desperately needs a peace treaty. The solution? He arranges for his son, Crown Prince Peter, to marry Constanza of Castile. It is a brilliant political move. What could possibly go wrong? The royal carriage arrives in Lisbon. Constanza steps out. She's fine, a solid 7 out of 10. But stepping out of the carriage, right behind her is her lady-in-waiting, a minor Galician noblewoman named Inés de Castro. Peter takes one look at Inés, and his brain stops functioning. She is, by all historical accounts, devastatingly beautiful. She has bright blue eyes, pale skin, and an elegance that makes the actual princess look like a background extra. Peter instantly, hopelessly, and recklessly falls in love with the bridesmaid. He goes through with the wedding to Constanza because, again, diplomacy, but he does the absolute bare minimum as a husband. Instead, he openly flaunts his obsessive affair with Inés. The Portuguese court is a rumor mill, and Constanza is humiliated. In a desperate, frankly genius move, Constanza tries to trap them using Catholic loopholes. She invites Inés to be the godmother to one of her newborn children. In medieval Catholicism, this creates a bond of spiritual kinship. If Peter slept with his child's godmother, it would technically be considered incest by the church. It was a great plan. Unfortunately, the baby dies a week later. God apparently was rooting for the affair. King Afonso is watching this soap opera unfold in absolute horror. This isn't just family drama, it is a national security crisis. Inés has ambitious brothers who are whispering in Peter's ear, gaining political influence, and dragging Portugal into Castilian border disputes. Afonso tries to fix it by banishing Inés to the Spanish border. Peter completely ignores the banishment and just uses the royal treasury to send her an endless stream of obsessive love letters. In 1349, Constanza dies in childbirth. Peter rejoices. He is a free man. He immediately moves Inés into a palace in Coimbra, acts like she is his wife, and proceeds to have 4 illegitimate children with her. He demands his father let them marry. King Afonso says, absolutely not. He realizes that as long as Inés is breathing, Portugal is at risk of a civil war over the succession. So, King Afonso decides to perform a late-term breakup. On January 7th, 1355, Afonso waits until Peter is out of town on a hunting trip. He sends 3 political assassins, Piero Cielo, Alvaro Gonalves, and Diogo Lopes Pacheco, to the monastery of Santa Clara in Coimbra. They corner Inés. According to legend, she falls to her knees, surrounded by her young children, begging the king for mercy. The assassins do not care. They draw their swords and decapitate her on the spot. Father of the year, ladies and gentlemen. When Peter returns from hunting and finds the love of his life slaughtered by his own father's men, his grief is absolute. And then his grief mutates into pure, unadulterated psychotic rage. Peter raises a rebel army. He declares war on his own father. He spends months marching through northern Portugal, burning towns to the ground, slaughtering anyone loyal to the king. The civil war only stops when Peter's mother literally begs them to sign a truce. Peter signs it, but he doesn't forget. He just waits. 2 years later, King Afonso dies of natural causes. Peter is crowned King of Portugal. And the very first item on his royal agenda is extreme, unspeakable violence. The 3 assassins had fled to Castile. Peter uses all of his geopolitical leverage, trading Castilian fugitives to get his hands on the men who murdered Inés. Pacheco manages to escape to France, but Peter secures Cielo and Gonalves. In 1361, the 2 assassins are dragged before King Peter in the town of Santarém. Peter doesn't just want them dead, he wants poetry. He orders his executioners to literally rip the hearts out of the assassins' bodies while they are still alive and conscious. He has one heart pulled out through the chest and the other hacked out through the back. His historical justification? You broke my heart, so I will physically take yours. Some chronicles claim Peter calmly at a banquet while watching them scream. But Peter wasn't done. He announces to the court that he had secretly married Ines years ago, making her the lawful queen. Then, according to the darkest, most famous legend in Portuguese history, he orders her tomb opened. He exhumes the rotting corpse of Inés de Castro. He dresses her skeletal remains in the finest, gold-laced royal silk. He props her up on the throne. He places the crown of Portugal onto her decaying skull. And then he forces every single nobleman who had ever conspired against her to walk up, bow down, and kiss her decomposing hand. He later builds two magnificent, intricately carved tombs in the Alcoba monastery. He places them foot to foot, not side by side. Foot to foot? Why? Because Peter believed that when the trumpets sound on Judgment Day and the dead rise from their graves, the very first thing he wanted to see when he opened his eyes was her. Romantic? Yes. Deeply, deeply disturbing. Absolutely. Welcome to the 1920s. The Qing dynasty has collapsed, leaving a massive power vacuum. China has fractured into a bloody, chaotic mess known as the warlord era. The central government is basically a suggestion. The real power belongs to regional military dictators with private armies, fancy uniforms, and absolutely zero regard for human life. They are playing a giant, real-life game of risk, and millions of peasants are paying the price. Enter Sun Chuanfang. They call him the warlord of the 5 provinces. He commands tens of thousands of troops. He is brilliant, he is ruthless, and his favorite hobby is decapitating his rivals to send a message. In October 1925, a rival general named Shi Kongbin is sent to fight Sun Chuanfang's forces. The battle goes horribly wrong. General Shi is outmaneuvered, surrounded, and captured. In traditional military doctrine, a captured general is usually treated with a baseline of respect, perhaps held for ransom. Sun Chuanfang doesn't care about tradition. He orders General Shi to be summarily executed. They chop off his head, mount it on a long bamboo pike, and display it at the bustling Bengba train station. He leaves it there to rot in the sun as a grotesque billboard for his own power. News of this brutal humiliation reaches the Shi family. Shi Kongbin's daughter, a 21-year-old college student named Shi Gulan, is entirely shattered. Her family is publicly disgraced. Her father's soul is denied peace. In the deeply traditional framework of Confucian filial piety, a child has a sacred duty to avenge a murdered parent. But let's look at the reality. She is a grieving female student in a heavily patriarchal society. Sun Chuanfang is a heavily armed warlord, surrounded by bodyguards. She initially expects her older brother to take revenge. He promises he will, but years pass, and he takes a cushy government job instead, quietly deciding he doesn't want to die. She turns to her cousin. Her cousin also flakes. Shi Gulan realizes a cold, hard truth. If you want a warlord dead, you have to do it yourself. Second, she prepares for war, and this is where her dedication becomes terrifying. First, she changes her name. She legally drops Gulan and becomes Shi Jianqiao, which translates to the Sword of Vengeance. Shi Jianqiao had been subjected to the ancient practice of foot binding. Her foot bones were broken and folded as a child to keep them small. You cannot stalk an assassin or run from a crime scene on bound feet. So she undergoes excruciating, agonizing surgery to unbind her feet, breaking the bones again to force them flat so she can walk normally. She mutilates her own body just to physically prepare for murder. Then, she waits. 10 years pass. The political winds in China shift radically. A guy named Chiang Kai-shek launches the Northern Expedition, violently sweeping across the country and wiping out the warlords. Sun Chuanfang's empire collapses. He loses his armies. He loses his territory. Faced with the sudden, horrifying reality of his own mortality and a lifetime of bloody karma, the mass murderer decides he's done with violence. He moves to the city of Tianjin, shaves his head, and becomes a devout, peace-loving Buddhist monk. He literally starts a society for the rescuing of animals and spends his days chanting sutras. He found his Zen. Good for him. But Shi Jianqiao didn't give a damn about his spiritual awakening. She tracks him to Tianjin. She buys a Browning semi-automatic pistol. She stakes out the Nanlian Buddhist temple. She learns his exact schedule, noting exactly when he prays, where he sits, and who guards him. November 13th, 1935. It is a rainy Wednesday. Shi Jianqiao steps into the temple courtyard. She is wearing a heavy winter coat. The Browning is loaded and tucked in her pocket. Inside the main hall, Sun Chuan Fang is kneeling on a cushion in front of a golden Buddha. His eyes are closed. He is leading a group of worshippers in chanting a peaceful sutra. Shi Junqiao slowly walks into the hall. She slips quietly past the other monks. She stands directly behind the man who put her father's head on a spike. She draws the Browning pistol. She points it at the back of the monk's head, and she coldly unloads 3 bullets directly into his skull, jaw, and spine. Namaste. Sun Chuan Fan drops dead onto his prayer cushion in a pool of blood. The temple erupts into absolute screaming chaos. Monks are running for their lives. But Shi Junqiao does not run. She doesn't even try to escape. Instead, she calmly sits down next to the bleeding corpse of her father's killer. She opens her purse, pulls out a stack of freshly mimeographed leaflets she had printed beforehand, and starts handing them out to the terrified bystanders like a lethal PR campaign. The leaflets explain exactly who she is, who he was, and why he deserved it. It even includes a poem she wrote, "I shed tears to resolve my vengeance." I urge onlookers not to panic. The person who took action will take the blame. She is arrested and goes to trial. The case becomes the trial of the century. It completely fractures Chinese society. The modernists demand she be hanged for first-degree murder to uphold the rule of law. But the traditionalists, the media, and the public treat her like a rock star. They argue her premeditated murder was the ultimate, legally justifiable act of filial piety. The pressure is so immense that the case reaches the nationalist government's Supreme Court. Their official verdict: they give her a full state pardon. She walked into a church, executed a monk from behind, handed out poetry, and the government essentially said, well, he started it. Shi Junqiao walked free and lived peacefully until 1979. It is the mid-13th century. The Mongol Empire is the apex predator of human history. Under the descendants of Genghis Khan, the Mongols aren't just conquering cities, they are permanently deleting them from the map. The Khwarezmian Empire, covering modern-day Iran and Central Asia, makes the fatal mistake of insulting a Mongol trade caravan. In response, the Mongols invade, butchering an estimated 15 million people. They burn the libraries, salt the fields, and turn a booming civilization into a silent graveyard. Amidst the apocalyptic ashes, a young royal boy is captured. Stripped of his titles, he is dragged in chains to the slave markets of Damascus. He is purchased by the Ayyubid Sultanate of Egypt. He is thrust into the Mamluk system. The Mamluks are a caste of elite slave soldiers. Bought as children from the steppes, they are subjected to brutal, gladiatorial military training. They are taught to ride, to shoot bows from horseback, and to kill without hesitation. In the barracks, this young Khwarezmian prince is given a new name, Sefad Din Qutuz. It translates roughly to the rabid dog, because he fights like a beast who has nothing left to lose. Qutuz survives the pits. He becomes a master of warfare. And he soon realizes a fundamental truth of Egyptian politics. If the slaves are the only ones holding the swords, why are they taking orders? The Mamluks overthrow their masters through a ruthless series of backroom assassinations and political maneuvers. The former slave boy, known as the Rabid Dog, claws his way to the very top. In 1259, Qutuz declares himself the Sultan of Egypt, just in time for the end of the world. In 1258, Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis, arrives in the Middle East with a massive Mongol horde. He attacks Baghdad, the undisputed jewel of the Islamic Golden Age. The destruction is absolute. The Mongols slaughter so many scholars and throw so many books into the Tigris River that the water runs black with ink and red with blood. The Caliph of Baghdad is rolled up in a carpet and trampled to death by Mongol horses. Syria falls next. Damascus surrenders. Aleppo is wiped out. Egypt is the very last domino. If Egypt falls, the Mongols have an open road into North Africa and Europe. In 1260, Hulagu's diplomats arrive in Cairo. They march into the royal court and hand Qutuz a letter. It is a masterpiece of psychological terror. It reads, "From the King of Kings of the East and West, to Qutuz the Mamluk, who fled to escape our swords. We have conquered vast areas, massacring all the people. You cannot escape the terror of our armies. Our horses are swift, our arrows sharp, our swords like thunderbolts. We are not moved by tears. Tear down your forts and submit, or we will kill your children and your old men together." The Egyptian advisors are visibly shaking in their boots. They beg Qutuz to surrender. Qutuz looks at the letter. He remembers the burning of his homeland. He remembers the slave markets. He walks over to the Mongol envoys, and he slices them in half. He chops off their heads and hangs them from the Bab Zawela Gate in the center of Cairo. Diplomacy failed successfully. There is no going back now. It is total war. Qutuz allies himself with another Mamluk general named Baybars. Baybars is a Kipchak Turk who was also sold into slavery by the Mongols. He is a terrifying, ruthless tactical genius. They scrape together an army of 20,000 men. Then, history throws them a bone. The Great Khan dies back in China. Hulagu is forced to take the bulk of the Mongol army back east to deal with succession politics. He leaves his trusted general, Kitbuka, with around 20,000 hardened Mongol veterans to finish off Egypt. In September 1260, the two armies meet in the Jezreel Valley at a place called Anjala, the Spring of Goliath. Baybars takes the vanguard. He rides out, attacks the Mongols, and then fakes a panicked retreat. General Kitbuka, fueled by decades of Mongol arrogance, takes the bait. He orders a full charge, chasing Baybars blindly into the valley. Right into Qutuz's trap. The Egyptian army emerges from the highlands. The ambush is sprung, but the Mongols do not panic. They are the greatest killing machine on earth. They turn and fight with terrifying ferocity. The battle is a horrific meat grinder. The Mamluk left flank shatters under the Mongol cavalry charge. Complete collapse is imminent. If the line breaks, Egypt falls. The world falls. Seeing his men retreating, Qutuz does the unthinkable. He rides to the very front line. He rips off his battle helmet, tossing it to the ground so his men can see his face. It is a suicidal move. He raises his sword and screams into the chaos, W. Islam, O Islam, grant your servant Qutuz victory. And the Sultan of Egypt charges headfirst, completely unprotected, straight into the Mongol vanguard. His soldiers are so stunned by the sheer madness of their sultan that they rally. Their courage returns. They push back with overwhelming force. General Kitbuka refuses to retreat and is slaughtered on the battlefield. The Mongols break. They turn, and for the first time in human history, the unstoppable Mongol war machine runs away in fear. Qutuz and Baybars pull it off. Two former slaves just saved the entire Muslim and Christian world from total annihilation. They are living legends, saviors of humanity. A few weeks later, they are riding back to Cairo in triumph. Baybars expects to be rewarded with the governorship of Aleppo. Qutuz tells him no, big mistake. While passing through the Nile Delta, the royal hunting party stops to chase a rabbit. Baybars rides up to Qutuz, pretending to ask for a favor. He grabs Qutuz's hand to kiss it in respect. It is a trap. Baybars pulls the Sultan forward, and his CEO conspirators step from the shadows and stab Qutuz to death. Baybars immediately rides into Cairo and declares himself the new Sultan. Qutuz survived slavery, survived the gladiator pits, and defeated the greatest military empire in human history, only to get shanked by his best friend over a job promotion on the way home. History isn't just written by the victors, it's written by the guys who stabbed the victors in the back.